Hello and welcome to our online class of social science. Today I will explain one of the important topic of class 6th. What books and burials tell us. You might be surprised to hear the sound of this word burials, because in writing it is written burials, burials, but in speaking its pronunciation is burials. Refers to a place where people were buried after the death. Here we have content of this chapter. In this chapter we will discuss following contents. One of the oldest book in the world. How historians study the Rigveda. Cattle, horses and chariots. Words to describe people. And story of megaliths. As this chapter is concerned with class 6 students, that is why I will use very slow pace to explain these topics step by step. I hope students will be able to listen this video and they will understand the chapter very easily. Before moving ahead, let me tell about one short story which is given in the beginning of this chapter about Mary, a student who entered in her school library first time and got surprised to see that the library size was larger than her classroom and it was full of books. She saw one library cupboard in the corner. She asked her teacher which books were in the cupboard lying in the corner area. Her teacher told that these are very special books which are written on different religions. As you all know that there are many religions in the world: Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Jainism, Sikhism, etc. She got wondered and asked about Vedas. So here the first para of this chapter is beginning with one of the oldest book in the world, Veda. There are total 4 Vedas. These are the oldest books of India, which were composed around 3500 years ago. We will discuss about Vedas in detail. First of all, you understand that there are 4 Vedas. Number 1, Rigveda, which is the oldest Veda. It is also called as Ved, Rigved. Samved or Samveda, Yajurved and Atharvaved. These are four Vedas. Rigveda is the oldest Veda. It includes 1028 hymns. Hymns are called suktas or the well said. These hymns are written in praise of God and goddesses. In these Vedas, God Agni, who is the god of fire, and god Indra, a warrior god, is mentioned. Along with it, Som plant is also mentioned, which was used to prepare a special drink. You might have heard that Som Ras was used by the kings in ancient period. Here are some more facts about the Vedas, that these Vedas or the hymns are composed by sages or rishi in Hindi. These are sages, priests or pandits, or you may say gurus. They taught hymns to their students. You might have seen some religious epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, in which these were taught to Lord Rama and his brothers in the childhood. Same to other characters too. It is said that some of these hymns were composed by women too. Not only the men sages, but women also composed, but very rarely. These are written in Sanskrit language. As you all know that it is an oldest language of our country. All religious texts of northern India are written in this language. There are some facts about Rigveda. Some other facts are given here, that these hymns or well saids, or you may say shlokas in Hindi, are in the form of dialogues, dialects, mainly dialogues between Vishwamitra says and two rivers Byas and Satluj is mentioned in this chapter, in which he stopped the way of these rivers by his request. In the chapter we have discussion about some other languages too. Sanskrit is the part of Indo-European language. It is from the family of that language. Some Indian languages such as Assamese, Gujarati, Hindi, Kashmiri and Sindhi, these are the languages of India. In the northern part and eastern part, these languages were spoken. Asian languages such as Persian and many European languages such as British, this English, French, German, Greek, Italian, and Spanish language. There are some common words which are used in different languages. For example, mother, matri in Sanskrit, ma in Hindi, mother in English. About the language, Indo, this Tibeto-Burman language was used in the subcontinent region. Tamil, Telugu, Kannada and Malayalam, these languages belong to the Dravidian family. And languages spoken in Jharkhand and the parts of central India belong to Austro-Asiatic family. Here we have second part of this chapter, cattle, horses and chariots. In Rigveda, these are mentioned again and again as people, they used cattle for their basic needs. Horses were also used in battles that time. People, they used to capture the horses during the wars. Battles were also fought for land and sometimes for man and water. Here we have discussion about this topic, yagnas. Yagnas refers to yas, means sacrifice, which we are performing in our daily life for special functions like Kuan Pujan, marriage and other festivals. Wealth was used to perform these yajnas that time. You might have heard some names like Ashwamedh Yaj, Rajsuya Yag, etc. These yajnas were meant for the god and goddesses. If you remember, in Ramayana and Mahabharata, these are mentioned many times. Ghee and grain was used in these yajnas. Grain was priests who performed the yajnas. During the war, men took part in the wars. That time, in Vedic period, if we are talking, there was no regular army like today. Today we are having army, air force and navy, but that time there was no regular army. People were called by the Raja at the time of wars only. There were assemblies. You might have heard some names like Sabha and Samitis were some of the assemblies in which people discussed about the war and peace. They chose their leaders who were brave and warriors. Now, next para of this chapter, as we have seen in our content, is about the words to describe people. Means there were different ways to describe the people in Rigveda. Number one, in terms of their work, what they did. Language. Language they spoke, place where they lived, their communities, their cultural practices. Meanwhile, people were known by their work, language, place, communities, and cultural practices. Like today, people are known by their country's name, state name, place name, community name, religion name. That time, people were mainly in divided in Rigveda. Mainly two groups are discussed. One is the priests or Brahmins who performed various rituals, yagnas, who worked as a teacher preacher that time, and the second one is rajas. Although role of raja was not important that time, they had no capital cities, they had no palaces, no regular army, they did not collect tax, they had no hereditary power, means from father to son. Only brave people were given the responsibility of the rajas. These two words were used that time to explain the place. Number one is jana or wish. Jana nowadays also we use to describe the people. Jana here it refers people. Jan. There were different janas or janpadas that time, like Puru, like Bharat. These were two main janas, and the third one is Yadu. Meanwhile, during this period, they used this term to explain their community or a small kingdom called Janapada. Puru, Bharat, and Yadujan. These are only examples. Later on, these janas became Mahajanpadas. There were 16 Mahajanpadas, which we will discuss in the next chapters. Here we have two different terms, dasas or dasyus. These are Hindi terms for the slave. Dasa means a slave. He or she could not perform any yajna or sacrifices. Dasas, they spoke different languages that time. They were mainly captured in wars. They were treated as a property, mean just like the items. They were sold and purchased. Even they were conquered from the wars. These slaves were forced to do any work as per the choice of their owner. The last important part of this chapter is the story of megaliths. What are these megaliths? Let me show you one picture of these megaliths. You can understand easily by watching this picture that there are stone boulders. Meanwhile, at the outset, big stones are kept, then medium stones, small stones, and in the center there are four stones making a rectangular shape where dead person was buried or kept along with some other items which we will discuss. So this is called megalith. Megalith refers to stone boulders. Here stone boulders are known as megaliths or known as big stones. You can see in this picture big stones are kept. This was mainly an identification area or place, earmarked place where they buried their family members. This was used to mark the burial site. Megaliths began about 3000 years ago. About 3000 years ago, people they used these megaliths. These are mainly found in Deccan or the South India, in northeast provinces of the country, and in Kashmir region, meanwhile in northern part of our country. Some facts about these megalith sites. Some megaliths were underground, means these were underground. You can see in the previous slide that these megaliths were under the ground, means people dug the ground and made a place to keep the dead bodies under the ground. Archaeologists, here archaeologists means people who study the objects, those who discover the objects related to past. They found some circles of stone boulders and in some places a single large stone that was used to identify this burial site. These were indications that someone is buried beneath, under the ground. In some of the megaliths, pots or the black and red wares are found, whereas in others some tools, weapons of iron, because the iron was very common in use that time, skeletons of horses. Meanwhile people of that time they used horses also, equipments of horses. Meanwhile that time they were habitual of using horses for the warfare. Some ornaments of stone and gold are found from these burial sites. Let me explain one of the important burial site of that time, Brahmagiri. In Brahmagiri, one skeleton is found with 33 gold beads. 33 gold beads, 2 stone beads, 4 copper bangles and 1 conch shell. Meanwhile this skeleton was of a rich person or maybe of a king, whereas other skeletons had only few pots in which people kept some important items related to that person or grain. These burial sites are showing the status of the people. There is a belief that people believed that they had to bury some grain and other items along with the dead body so that people could return at the same place whenever they wanted to. Meanwhile, they believed in the theory of rebirth. They believed in the theory of Punarjanam or rebirth. Here we have one another burial site which is shown in this chapter, Inamgaon. This site we found from Maharashtra region. On the river Ghod, a tributary of Bhima river in Maharashtra region. This burial site is around 3600 years to 2600 years old. At this place, adults were buried in the ground, laid out straight with the head towards the north. Here some other facts are also found, that some burials were within the houses also. In between the houses they made some burials. Food and water vessels were also placed with the dead body. They kept some food items and water vessels so that the person could take the water. He should not remain hungry. Even there was a theory of rebirth. They believed that the person might come at that place any of the time. In one burial site, one man was found buried in a large four-legged clay jar in the courtyard of 5-roomed house. It shows that it was a burial site of a rich person. 5 rooms houses are also found. Next we have some evidences of food items. Archaeologists, they found some of the food items from this place, like wheat. These are the food grains which they used: wheat, barley, rice, pulses, millets, peas and sesame. They also got an evidences of meat, because archaeologists, they found some skeletons and bones of animals like buffalo, goat, sheep, dog, horse, ass, pig. Some were spotted deer, black buck, antelope, hare and mongoose. And they found some bones of birds too, like birds of that time they found, like sparrow, etc. Even crocodile, turtle, crab and fish, these are also found. Archaeologists, they found some other evidences or the seeds of bear, amla, jamun, dates and berries. It means most of the food items are same like today. People, they used these food items in their daily life. They were doing agriculture that time. Here in this chapter we have one fact about elsewhere or the other country like China, that writings were there on the bones. People used bones in their writings. Kings, they got scribes. Scribes here it means writers, those who write the questions on the bones, and those bones were put into the fire, and there was some mystery, means they believed that these are the fortune tellers. So kings, life of the kings was totally different from Indian kings that time. They lived in palaces, they had good wealth, and they did not know the use of iron. So in this chapter, this fact is given at the back, the last page of the chapter. It was necessary to read this point also. You can write down all the main points of this chapter from this slide in your notebook. I hope you understand this chapter easily. I tried my best to explain this chapter in a very slow speed so that you can understand easily. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.